Ho floated in the darkness between the stars. Around him, the broken pieces of his ship drifted slowly, spinning in the endless black. The research vessel Horizon's Edge was dead, and soon Ho knew he would be dead too. He looked at the oxygen meter on his suit. 4 hours, maybe less. The number glowed red in the darkness, counting down the minutes of his life. 12 bodies floated near him. His friends. Captain 1, whose wife was expecting their first child. Young Nam Jin, only 23 years old on her very first space mission. Old Sung, who had talked every day about his retirement, about the small house by the sea he wanted to buy. All of them gone, dead in seconds when the unknown object hit their ship. Only Ho survived. He did not know why. Perhaps the engineering bay had better protection. Perhaps it was just luck. Bad luck, he thought. Living long enough to die slowly was not a gift. He pulled out his personal recorder. The small device still worked. At least he could leave a message for his family. "Ah," he said, his voice rough. "My love, I am sorry, I am so sorry." He thought of his wife, Park Ah. She was a doctor back in Seoul, saving children's lives every day. She was strong, stronger than him. She would survive this. She would take care of their daughter. Tell that her father loves her. Tell her every day. Tell her I wanted to come home. Tell her I tried. 6 years old. She had cried at the spaceport when he left. She had held his hand and begged him not to go. He had promised her he would return. He had promised her he would bring her a star. Now he would break that promise. Ho closed his eyes. He was not afraid of death. He had made peace with it during his long hours alone in the wreckage. What hurt was leaving them behind. What hurt was knowing he would never see his daughter grow up, never grow old with his wife, never sit in a garden and watch the sunset with the people he loved. "I love you," he whispered into the recorder. "Both of you, forever." He ended the recording. And then the light came. It started as a small point of gold in the distance. Ho thought it was a star, but it grew brighter and brighter. It moved toward him with purpose, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Ho raised his hand to shield his eyes. The light was warm on his skin, even through his suit. It felt like sunlight. It felt like summer mornings on Earth, like the warmth of his daughter's smile. The light took shape. A woman stood before him, but she was not a woman, she was something else, something more. Her skin glowed with soft gold. Her eyes held the depth of galaxies. Her hair flowed around her like liquid starlight, moving slowly as if underwater. She was beautiful, she was terrifying, she was impossible. "Human," she said. Her voice was music, it was thunder. It filled his mind and echoed in his bones. "I am Vila, I am an eternal. In your words, I am what you would call a goddess." Ho stared at her. He wondered if his oxygen was already running out, if this was a dream brought by a dying brain. "You are not dreaming," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "I am real. I have watched civilizations rise and fall across this universe. I have existed since before your son was born, and I have come here to this place of death because of you." "Me?" Ho's voice cracked. "Why me?" Vila moved closer. She seemed to walk on nothing, her feet finding invisible ground in the emptiness of space. "I appear to those who face death with dignity," she said. "Those who do not scream or beg or curse the universe. You accepted your end with peace in your heart. That is rare. That is precious. And so I offer you my gift." She raised one perfect hand. "3 wishes," she said. "Any 3 things you desire. There are no limits, no tricks, no hidden costs. I offer this to the worthy, and you, Ho, are worthy." Ho's mind raced. 3 wishes, unlimited power. He could save himself. He could become immortal. He could have anything he wanted. But then his eyes moved to the bodies floating around him. Captain, whose unborn child would never know its father. Jin, whose parents were waiting for her to come home. Sung, whose wife was planning their retirement party. 11 other souls, 11 other stories that ended too soon. "Why?" Ho asked. Why do you do this? Why does a goddess care about dying mortals? Vila's expression flickered. Something ancient moved behind her golden eyes. I have granted wishes to 10,000 species, she said. Your wishes reveal the truth of what you are. The final desire of a dying soul shows the heart of an entire civilization. I collect these truths. I study them. In their last moments, beings show me who they really are. And what do they wish for? Ho asked. Survival, Vila said simply. Power, revenge, pleasure, the same things again and again across every species I have encountered. In the face of death, all beings become the same, selfish, desperate, hungry. She looked at him with ancient curiosity. So tell me, human, tell me what you truly desire. Show me the heart of your species. Make your first wish. Ho was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Captain. He remembered the day the captain had shared photos of the nursery he had painted. Yellow walls, little animals on the ceiling, so much hope. He looked at Jin. He remembered her excitement when she first saw the stars from space. She had cried with joy. He looked at Sung. He remembered the old man talking about his wife, about the 50 years they had spent together, about how he could not wait to see her again. Ho had already said goodbye to his family. He had already made peace with his death, but these people deserved to go home. He looked at Vila. My first wish, he said slowly, is for you to save them, not me. Bring back my crew and send them home. Let them live. Vila did not move. For a long moment she simply stared at him. Her golden eyes were wide. Her perfect face showed something Ho did not expect. Jacques. What did you say? She whispered. Save them, Ho repeated. That is my wish. Bring them back to life and send them home to their families. Vila took a step backward. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, as if seeing something that should not exist. No, she breathed, that cannot be. Her voice trembled. A goddess who had lived for millions of years trembled before a dying human. And Ho simply waited, floating in the darkness between the stars, asking for nothing for himself. Vila could not believe what she had heard. In 10 million years, across thousands of worlds and countless dying souls, no one had ever made such a wish. She stared at the human floating before her. Ho, a simple engineer from a small blue planet, a mortal man with only hours to live, and he had just done something impossible. You are lying, she said. Her voice was no longer music. It was sharp with confusion. You must be lying. You are performing for me. You think if you appear noble, I will reward you with more. Ho shook his head slowly. I am not performing. I know what I want. No creature wishes for others first. Vila's form flickered with golden light, her agitation showing in waves of energy. I have watched a species known across the galaxy for their wisdom and kindness. When their world burned, their greatest philosopher used his first wish to become immortal while children died around him. She moved closer to Ho, her eyes searching his face. I have seen the poets and dreamers who wrote songs about love and sacrifice. When their son died, their beloved queen wished for the destruction of her enemies rather than the salvation of her people. Vila's voice dropped to a whisper. I have watched 10,000 civilizations face their end, and every single time when death comes close, they think only of themselves. Every single time they prove that their beautiful words about love and sacrifice are lies, pretty stories they tell in times of peace. When the darkness comes, they abandon everything. She spread her hands wide. And now you, a human, a member of a species I have never visited before, tell me you want to save others before yourself. Impossible. It goes against every truth I have learned in 10 million years. Ho looked at the bodies of his floating in the darkness around them. His face was tired but calm. Captain 1, he said. He was our leader, strict but fair. His wife is named Myra. She is pregnant with their first child, a boy. They were going to name him Jun. The captain talked about his son every day, about teaching him to fish, about watching him grow up. Vila frowned. What are you doing? Engineer Nam Jin, Ho continued. 23 years old. Brilliant. She graduated at the top of her class. Her parents saved money for 15 years to send her to university. They called her every week to tell her how proud they were. This was her first mission. She was so excited. She wanted to see the stars. Ho's voice remained steady as he pointed to another body. Navigator Sung, 61 years old, married to his wife for 42 years. They had plans, a small house by the ocean, a garden where they would grow vegetables. He was going to retire next month. One more mission, he said, one more paycheck for the house, and then he would finally rest. He looked at Vila directly. Do you want me to continue? I can tell you about all of them. Sangwoo, our medic who left behind twin daughters. Park Jin-young, our pilot who was saving money for his mother's surgery. Bin, our scientist who... Stop, Vila said. Her voice was strange, uncertain. Why are you telling me this? Because they are not just bodies, Ho said simply. They are people. They have families waiting for them, children who need them, parents who love them, dreams they never got to finish. My death. I have accepted my death. I have said goodbye to my wife and daughter. But these people did not get that chance. They died in seconds, without warning, without being able to say the things they needed to say. He gestured at the cold emptiness around them. If you can truly grant any wish, then give them what I cannot give them. Give them their lives back. Send them home. Vila was silent for a long time. Then she did something she had not done in millions of years. She asked permission. May I look into your mind, she asked, to see if you speak the truth? Ho nodded, yes. Vila reached out with her power. She entered his thoughts gently, carefully. She saw his memories. His wife smiling in the rain on their wedding day. His daughter taking her first steps across their small apartment. Family dinners and quiet evenings and the simple joy of being together. She saw his fear. He was afraid of death. Of course he was. But he had pushed that fear away because he could not change his fate. She saw his love, deep and strong and selfless. Love for his family, love for his, love that asked for nothing in return. And she saw his wish. It was true. It was pure. He wanted to save others more than he wanted to save himself. Vila pulled back from his mind. She looked at him with new eyes. You mean it, she whispered. You truly mean it. Yes. You would die here alone so that they might live. Yes. Vila stood in the darkness of space, surrounded by the broken pieces of a dead ship, facing a man who had just shattered everything she believed about mortal beings. For the first time in 10 million years, she did not know what to say. Finally, she raised her hand. Then let it be so, she said. Golden light exploded outward. It touched each body floating in the wreckage. It poured into dead lungs and still hearts. It brought warmth to cold flesh and light to empty eyes. One by one, the crew of the Horizon's Edge gasped back to life. Captain coughed and grabbed for his helmet, confused and terrified. Jin screamed before realizing she could breathe again. Old Sung looked around with wide, disbelieving eyes. They were alive, all of them, confused, frightened, but alive. Behind them, a doorway of light opened in the fabric of space. Through it, Ho could see blue skies and green trees. Earth. Home. Go, Vila said, her voice filling the minds of the awakened crew. Return to your families. Live the lives that were taken from you. The crew did not need to be told twice. They moved toward the portal, still dazed, not understanding what had happened but knowing enough to move toward safety. One by one, they passed through the doorway of light. Captain paused at the threshold. He looked back at Ho. Ho, he called, what are you doing? Come with us. But Ho did not move. Go, Ho said. Tell Myra I said hello, take care of your son. What are you talking about? Come on. But the portal was already closing. The captain reached out, but it was too late. The doorway sealed shut, taking the crew safely to Earth, leaving Ho alone with the goddess. Vila looked at him with something new in her ancient eyes, curiosity, wonder, and something that might have been hunger. "You still have 2 wishes," she said slowly, "and I find myself wanting to know more about you, Ho, about your species, about the strange creatures who would give away their lives for others." She smiled. It was a strange smile, ancient and curious and slightly dangerous. "You will not escape me so easily, human. We have much to discuss." And Ho, floating alone in the darkness between the stars, realized that his journey was far from over. The universe bent around them. Space and time folded like paper. One moment, Ho was floating in the wreckage of his ship. The next, he was standing somewhere else entirely. It was a vast hall, endless. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into golden mist. The walls were lined with crystals, billions of them, each one glowing with soft inner light. They stretched in every direction as far as Ho could see and further still. "Welcome to my realm," Vila said. She walked beside him, her bare feet touching a floor that seemed made of solid light. "This place exists outside your universe, outside time itself." Ho looked around in wonder. "What is this place?" "The Hall of Wishes." Vila gestured at the endless rows of crystals. "Every wish I have ever granted is recorded here, every final desire of every dying soul across 10 million years. This is my collection, my life's work." She stopped before one of the crystals. Inside it, images moved like tiny ghosts, strange creatures with too many limbs screaming in a burning city. Though Vila said, "I told you about them. They were considered the species in their galaxy, philosophers, teachers, peacemakers. When their star began to die, they had centuries to prepare. They built great ships. They could have saved millions, but their leaders fought over who would escape first. By the end, they were killing each other for seats on the evacuation vessels." She touched the crystal gently. "Their greatest philosopher was the last survivor. I appeared to him as his world burned. He wished for immortality. He wanted to live forever, even as his people turned to ash around him. I granted his wish. He lived for 10,000 more years alone until he finally begged me to let him die." They walked further into the hall. Vila stopped at another crystal. Thus she said, "Beautiful creatures. They had 4 wings and skin like flowing water. They were artists and poets. They wrote songs about love that could make even an eternal weep. Their queen was beloved by all. She ruled with kindness for 300 years. The images in the crystal showed a delicate being with wings of light, surrounded by fire and destruction. When their enemies came, the queen had one chance to save her people. I offered her 3 wishes. She could have wished for peace. She could have wished for her people to escape. Instead, she wished for her enemies to suffer. She wished for their children to die screaming. She wished for their world to burn for 1,000 years." Vila's voice was cold. "I granted her wishes. Her enemies were destroyed, but so was everything they had built. Their songs of love were forgotten. Their art was lost. They became creatures of hatred and revenge, and within a century they had destroyed themselves completely." Ho walked in silence, looking at the endless crystals around him. Each one held a story. Each one held the final moment of a civilization. "You see the pattern," Vila said. "It was not a question." "Yes," Ho admitted. "They all choose themselves. When death comes, they forget everything else." "Every time." Vila's voice was tired, ancient and tired. "I have watched it happen countless times. Species that seemed noble, that seemed kind, that seemed worthy. In the end, they all prove the same. When the darkness comes, love dies, hope dies, only hunger remains." She turned to face him. "And then you appeared, a human, a species I had never bothered to visit. Your people have barely touched the stars. You are young and small and weak, and yet you did something no other being has ever done in my entire existence." "I just did what felt right," Ho said quietly. That is exactly what makes you strange. Vila began walking again and Ho followed. Tell me about your species. Tell me about humans. What makes you different? Ho thought for a moment. He was not a philosopher. He was not a leader or a poet. He was just an engineer who fixed broken machines. I do not know if we are different, he said honestly. We have done terrible things too. Wars, cruelty, hatred. We have hurt each other in ways I am ashamed to describe. Then you are the same as all the others. Maybe, Ho paused, but we have also done other things. Soldiers who jump on explosives to save their friends. Parents who starve so their children can eat. Strangers who donate pieces of their own bodies to save people they have never met. People who run into burning buildings to rescue others. People who give everything they have to help someone they will never see again. Vila stopped walking. She turned to look at him with those ancient golden eyes. Isolated incidents, she said. Every species has moments of nobility. No, Ho said, surprising himself with his certainty. It is not isolated, it is. It is woven into who we are. We tell stories about sacrifice. We build monuments to people who died for others. Our greatest heroes are not the strongest or the richest. They are the ones who gave the most. He gestured at the crystals around them. You have watched 10,000 species in their worst moments. You appear only when they are dying, when they are desperate, when they have nothing left. And then you judge them for being afraid. But have you ever watched them live? Have you ever seen what they do when they are not facing death? Vila was silent. Maybe the problem is not the species, Ho continued. Maybe the problem is that you only see endings. You only see the final chapter. But a species is more than its ending. A species is everything that came before. Vila stared at him for a long time. In her eyes, something flickered, something old and buried and almost forgotten. No one has ever said that to me before, she said softly. Have you ever asked? Silence again. The Hall of Wishes stretched around them, filled with the memories of 10 million years of final moments. All that pain, all that fear, all those last breaths. Vila looked at the crystals around her, as if seeing them for the first time. Perhaps, she said slowly, I have been collecting the wrong memories. She turned back to Ho. Her expression had changed. The cold curiosity was gone, replaced by something warmer, something almost vulnerable. You have one wish remaining, she said. But before you make it, I want to understand. I want to see what you see. I want to know if your species is truly different or if you are simply an exception. What are you suggesting? Vila held out her hand. Show me, she said. Take me to your world. Let me walk among your people. Let me see humanity not in its final moments but in its ordinary days. Perhaps then I will understand. Ho looked at her hand. A goddess was asking him to teach her about being human. It seemed impossible. It seemed absurd. But he thought of his, alive now because of his wish. He thought of his wife and daughter, waiting for him on Earth. He thought of all the stories he had ever heard about people helping each other, saving each other, loving each other even when it cost them everything. Maybe this was important. Maybe this was why he survived when the others died. Maybe this was what he was meant to do. He took her hand. All right, he said, but my second wish comes first, and I think you are not going to like it. Vila raised an eyebrow. Try me, human. Ho smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since the accident. I wish for you to feel what we feel, not as an observer, not from the outside looking in. I wish for you to experience human emotions completely, fully as one of us, just for one day. Vila's eyes widened. And the universe held its breath. Vila laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes made of starlight. You wish for me to feel, she shook her head, still smiling. I have existed for 10 million years, human. I have transcended emotion. I have moved beyond the simple chemical reactions that you call feelings. What you ask is beneath me. Then it should be easy to grant, Ho said calmly. Vila's smile faltered. You do not understand. I am an eternal. We removed emotion from ourselves long ago when the universe was young. It was weakness. It led to conflict, to suffering, to destruction. We became pure mind, pure consciousness. We achieved perfection. And yet you spend 10 million years watching dying creatures make wishes, Ho said. You build a hall filled with their final moments. You study their emotions like a scientist studies insects. That does not sound like perfection to me. That sounds like longing. Vila's golden eyes flickered. You understand nothing. Maybe, but a wish is a wish. You said there were no limits. The goddess stood perfectly still. Around them, the hall of wishes seemed to hold its breath. The crystals dimmed slightly, as if sensing their master's hesitation. Finally, Vila spoke. Very well, she said. If you wish to waste your second wish on something so foolish, I will grant it. But do not expect me to change. One day of human emotion will mean nothing to me. She raised her hand. Golden light gathered around her fingers. I grant your wish, she said. For one human day I will feel as you feel. The light exploded outward. Vila gasped. Her perfect form flickered. Her golden skin dimmed to something more human, more fragile. She staggered backward, her hands flying to her chest. What is this? Her voice was different now. Smaller, shakier. No longer music, but something raw and broken. The world shifted around them. The Hall of Wishes faded away. They stood now on a busy street in Seoul, surrounded by people and cars and the chaos of human life. Vila had taken on a fully human form. She was still beautiful but mortal now, touchable, real. And she was trembling. I am cold, she whispered. Why am I cold? I have walked through dying stars without discomfort. Why does this small wind make me shake? Ho took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was strange, giving his jacket to a goddess. But right now, she did not look like a goddess. She looked like a frightened woman experiencing the world for the first time. That is cold, he explained. Your body is telling you to find warmth. It is trying to protect you. Vila pulled the jacket. Her eyes were wide, taking in everything around her. The people rushing past, the sounds of traffic, the smells of food from a nearby restaurant. There is so much, she breathed. How do you bear it, the noise, the movement, the feeling of everything all at once? A car horn blared nearby. Vila jumped, her heart racing. She put her hand on her chest, feeling the unfamiliar pounding. What is happening to me? Am I dying? No, Ho said gently. That is fear. Your body thinks you are in danger. It is preparing you to run or fight. Fear? Vila tested the word. I have watched species cower in fear for millions of years. I never understood why they could not simply control themselves. But this is not controllable. It is happening to me, not because of me. Ho nodded. Welcome to being human. They walked together through the streets of Seoul. Every step brought new sensations for Vila. The rough texture of the sidewalk through her shoes, the brush of strangers passing close, the warmth of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Then her stomach growled. Vila froze. She looked down at her belly with absolute horror. Something is wrong. There is a pain inside me. Something is hungry. Something wants to consume. Ho could not help but smile. That is hunger. It means you need to eat. Eat? You mean put dead things inside my body? Yes. Vila looked disgusted, but her stomach growled again, louder this time. Ho led her to a small restaurant. They sat at a simple wooden table, and he ordered 2 bowls of kimchi, a spicy stew with vegetables and tofu. When the food arrived, Vila stared at it suspiciously. Steam rose from the bowl. The smell filled the air, rich and warm and inviting. Just try it, Ho said. Slowly, carefully, Vila lifted the spoon to her lips. She took a small sip of the broth. Her eyes went wide. Oh, she breathed, oh. She took another sip, and another, Tears began to form in her eyes. "Why am I leaking?" she asked, confused. "I am not sad, I am not hurt. Why is water coming from my eyes?" "Because it is good," Ho said softly. "Sometimes humans cry when something is beautiful, when something touches us deeply." Vila ate the entire bowl. She ate it slowly, savoring every bite, tears streaming silently down her face. When she finished, she sat back and stared at the empty bowl as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "I have existed for 10 million years," she said quietly. "I have seen galaxies born and die. I have witnessed wonders that would break a mortal mind. And none of it felt like this. A simple bowl of food. How is that possible?" They continued walking. They passed a street musician playing a guitar and singing an old song about lost love. Vila stopped to listen. The music entered her, vibrated in her chest, made her feel things she could not name. When the song ended, she stood in silence for a long moment. "That sound," she said, "it made me feel sorrow, but also hope and something else, something warm and aching and beautiful. I do not have words for it." "That is what music does," Ho said. "It speaks to parts of us that words cannot reach." They walked through a park. A father was teaching his young son to ride a bicycle. The boy kept falling. Each time he fell, the father picked him up, dusted him off, and encouraged him to try again. Finally, after many attempts, the boy managed to ride a few meters without falling. The joy on the child's face was pure and bright. Vila watched with an expression Ho had never seen on her before. Her eyes were soft. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. And again, tears fell. "He falls," she said. "Again and again. It must hurt, it must be frustrating, but he keeps trying. And his father stays with him, waits for him, believes in him." "That is love," Ho said. "Love?" Vila turned to look at him. "I have heard that word in the final wishes of so many dying creatures. They speak of love as if it were oxygen, as if they could not exist without it. I always thought they were being dramatic." She looked back at the father and son. "I was wrong, I was so wrong." As the day went on, Vila experienced more. She felt anger when she saw a man yelling at a service worker. She felt sadness when they passed a funeral procession. She felt wonder when a child showed her a caterpillar in a small plastic box. And she felt fear again when a car almost hit them as they crossed a street. Real fear, sharp and electric, flooding her body with the desperate need to survive. By sunset, they sat on a bench overlooking the city. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple. Vila was exhausted. Her human body ached. Her mind was overwhelmed. And she was weeping again. "How do you bear it?" she asked. "All of this, all these feelings all the time, constantly. The joy and the pain and the fear and the hope all mixed together, all happening at once. How do you survive?" Ho looked at the sunset. "We bear it together," he said. "That is the secret. That is the thing you have never understood. We cannot bear it alone. No one can, but we carry each other. We help each other through the darkness. And somehow that makes it bearable. Somehow that makes it beautiful." Vila was silent for a long time. "I have made a terrible mistake," she finally said. Her voice was small, broken. "Not with you, with everyone, every species I have judged, every wish I have collected. I only saw them at the end when they were alone and afraid. I never saw them like this, together, helping each other, being human." She turned to face Ho. "You still have one wish left, and I think I know what you will wish for, but before you make it, I need to tell you the truth, about who I am, about what I have done, about why I am so alone." The sunset faded into twilight, and Vila began to speak. They sat together as the stars came out over Seoul. The city lights glowed below them like a mirror of the sky above. Vila's human form was tired, her borrowed body heavy with exhaustion. But her eyes held something new, something that had been buried for 10 million years. "Memory. I was not always a goddess," she began. Her voice was quiet, almost afraid. I was once like you, mortal, small, finite. I was born on a world so old that your sun had not yet begun to form. Ho listened in silence. My people were called the firstborn. We were the first intelligent species in this universe. When we looked at the stars, we saw only emptiness. There was no one else. No other minds, no other voices. Just us, alone in an infinite darkness. She looked up at the stars, and Ho could see the weight of ages in her eyes. For billions of years we grew, we learned, we loved and fought and dreamed. We were not perfect, we made mistakes. We hurt each other sometimes, but we also created beauty. Art that would make you weep, music that could heal broken hearts, stories that gave meaning to our existence. Her voice grew heavier. And then we discovered something terrible. We learned that the universe was dying. Very slowly, over trillions of years, the stars would fade. The galaxies would grow cold. Everything we had built, everything we had loved would eventually turn to dust. That must have been terrifying, Ho said softly. It was. We faced a choice. Accept that we would end someday like all things, or find a way to live forever. Vila's hands clenched in her lap. We chose forever. Our greatest scientists found a way to transcend physical form. We would become beings of pure energy, immortal, indestructible. We would exist until the last star faded and perhaps even beyond. That sounds like a miracle, Ho said. It was a curse, Vila's voice cracked. To become immortal, we had to change ourselves, our emotions. They were tied to our biology. Fear came from the need to survive. Love came from the need to connect. Joy came from the achievement of goals. All of these things required mortality, required an ending. Without death, they had no meaning. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were wet. So we removed them. We cut the feelings out of ourselves like a surgeon removing a tumor. We became eternals, pure mind, perfect logic. We would never feel pain again. We would never feel fear. We would never feel sadness. But you also would never feel joy, Ho said. Or love, or hope, or any of the things that made existence worth living. Vila shook her head. We did not understand that at the time. We thought we were ascending. We thought we were becoming more. Instead, we became less, so much less. The city hummed below them, full of life and noise and the messy chaos of mortal existence. At first there were billions of us, Vila continued. Eternals drifting through the universe watching the galaxies turn. We had all the time in existence. We had power beyond imagining. But without feelings we had no purpose. Nothing seemed worth doing. Nothing seemed worth thinking about. What happened? One by one we simply stopped. Vila's voice was hollow. We did not die, we could not die, we just chose to end our consciousness, to drift into nothingness, to escape the emptiness of eternal existence. She looked down at her hands, these temporary human hands. I watched my people disappear. My friends, my family, everyone I had ever known. Over millions of years, they all chose to stop existing, and I was too afraid to follow them. Afraid, Ho was surprised, but you said Eternals could not feel fear. We removed the feeling of fear, Vila said, but fear is more than a feeling. It is also a thought, a logic, the understanding that something is dangerous even if you cannot feel the danger. I understood that non-existence was permanent. I understood that if I stopped, I could never change my mind, and that understanding kept me here alone for 10 million years. She laughed bitterly. I told myself I had a purpose. I would watch the younger species. I would study them. I would learn what we had lost. That is why I began granting wishes. I hoped that by seeing what mortals truly desired, I would understand what we had given up. But instead, you only saw their worst moments, Ho said. Yes, because I could not understand any other moments. Without emotions, I could not recognize love when I saw it. I could not understand sacrifice or hope or joy. I only appeared at the end, when species were dying, because that was the only time they showed emotion strong enough for me to detect. She turned to face him fully. For 10 million years I collected the final wishes of dying souls, and each time I judged them. I told myself that emotions led to selfishness, that love was a lie that faded under pressure, that hope was foolish. Because that is what I saw, again and again and again. Tears were falling freely now. But I was wrong. I was seeing the worst of them because I was only looking at the worst moment. I was judging entire species by their final seconds of fear and desperation. I never saw the lives that came before, the love, the sacrifice, the small acts of kindness that meant nothing and everything. She reached out and took Ho's hand. And then you appeared, a human who wished for others when he could have wished for himself. You forced me to see what I had been missing. You forced me to feel again, even if only for a day. Ho squeezed her hand gently. What do you want? He asked. Not as a goddess, not as an eternal, as a person. What do you actually want? Vila was quiet for a long time. The sounds of the city washed over them. Somewhere a child laughed. Somewhere else music played. I want what you have, she finally whispered. I want to really feel, not just for a day but forever. I want to love and be loved. I want to fear and overcome my fears. I want to hope and have those hopes fulfilled. I want to live. She shook her head. But I am an eternal. I gave that up 10 million years ago. It is too late for me. Ho looked at her. This ancient being, this goddess who had watched universes spin into existence. She looked so small now, so lost, so desperately, painfully alone. He knew what his third wish had to be. It was impossible. It was probably the greatest gift anyone had ever given, and it would cost him everything. But looking at her, at the loneliness in her eyes, at the 10 million years of emptiness she had carried alone, he knew he had no other choice. What if it is not too late? He said quietly. What if there was another way? Vila looked at him with something like hope. And Ho began to tell her about his third wish. They stood now at the edge of everything. Vila had taken them to the boundary between her realm and the mortal universe. It was a place of impossible beauty, where stars hung like frozen tears and the fabric of reality shimmered with colors that had no names. Vila's human form was fading. The day was ending and she was becoming the goddess again. Her skin glowed with returning gold. Her eyes regained their depth of galaxies, but something had changed. The coldness was gone. In its place was a raw, open wound. You have one wish remaining, Vila said. Her voice was once again music, once again thunder, but now it held notes of pain, of longing, of something she had not felt in 10 million years. Hoping. I know what you will wish for, she continued. You will wish to return home, to your wife and daughter, to the life you left behind. It is what any sane creature would choose, and I will grant it gladly. You have given me more than any being in my entire existence. Ho shook his head slowly. That is not my wish. Vila frowned. Then what? Immortality. I can make you live forever. Power. I can make you a god among your people. Wealth. I can give you more riches than your planet has ever seen. None of those things. Then what do you want? Vila's voice cracked with frustration. What could possibly be worth more than returning to the family you love? Ho looked at her. This goddess. This ancient, lonely being who had existed since the universe was young. She had spent 10 million years alone, watching from the outside, never understanding what she had lost. He thought of his wife her smile when she woke up in the morning, her laughter when their daughter did something silly, the way she held his hand during sad movies, even though she pretended not to cry. He thought of his daughter, her bright eyes, her endless questions about the stars, the way she ran to him every time he came home, screaming with joy. He loved them, he would always love them, and he knew with absolute certainty that they would want him to do this. I wish, Ho said slowly, for you to have a second chance. Vila went still. I wish for you to be reborn, as a human on Earth. You will start as a baby, grow as a child, live a full human life. You will feel everything. Joy and pain, love and loss, hope and fear, all of it, real and complete and forever yours. Vila's golden eyes were wide with shock. And at the end of your life, Ho continued, when you are old and have lived every moment, you will remember what you were. You will remember this conversation, and you will be able to choose to become an eternal again, or to move on like all mortals do into whatever comes next. Silence. The boundary between realms shimmered. The stars held their breath. The entire universe seemed to pause, waiting for Vila's response. You cannot mean this, she whispered. I do. This wish. It would give up your chance to go home instantly. You would have to find your own way back. You might never see your family again. I know. You would sacrifice your only remaining wish. For me. For someone you met only hours ago. For a goddess who has watched your species from afar and judged them harshly. Yes. Vila stared at him. In her ancient eyes, Ho could see something breaking. Walls that had stood for 10 million years were crumbling. Defenses built to protect an empty heart were falling apart. Why, she asked, why would you do this? Ho smiled sadly. Because you have been alone for so long. Because no one deserves that kind of loneliness. Because I saw your face today when you ate that bowl of stew. I saw you cry when you heard music. I saw you smile when you watched that father teaching his son. He stepped closer to her. You said my species was different. Maybe we are, maybe we are not, but I know one thing for certain. The thing that makes us human, the thing that makes life worth living, is not strength or power or immortality. It is connection. It is love. It is the simple act of caring about someone other than yourself. He placed his hand over his heart. You gave my crew their lives back. You let me see my walk through that portal, knowing they would return to their families. That meant everything to me. And now I want to give you something in return. I want to give you the chance to experience what you have been watching for 10 million years. Vila was trembling. The goddess who had existed since before the stars was trembling before a simple human. I am afraid, she admitted. I have not felt fear in so long, but this, becoming mortal again, giving up my power, my memories, my identity, it terrifies me. That is the point, Ho said gently. Fear is part of being alive. You cannot have courage without fear. You cannot have triumph without risk. You cannot truly live without the possibility of loss. Vila closed her eyes. Tears of golden light fell down her cheeks. What if I fail? She asked. What if I become mortal and I'm just like all the others, selfish and afraid and small? Then at least you will have tried, Ho said. At least you will know, and I think you will surprise yourself. I think there is more humanity in you than you realize. You just forgot how to feel it. The boundary between realms flickered. Time was running out. Vila opened her eyes. They were still gold, still ancient, still filled with the wisdom of 10 million years. But now they also held something new. Determination. I accept, she said. The words echoed across the universe. I accept your wish, Ho. I will be reborn as a human. I will live a mortal life with all its joy and pain, and at the end I will choose my own path. She raised her hand. Light gathered around her, brighter than any sun. But know this, human. What you have done today will not be forgotten. The Eternals watch from the void. They see what is happening. And when they learn that a human gave a goddess the gift of mortality, everything will change. Ho did not understand what she meant, but there was no time to ask. The light exploded outward, and everything went white. When Ho opened his eyes, he was lying in a hospital bed in Seoul. Machines beeped around him. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Sunlight streamed through a window. He was home. A nurse rushed in, calling for doctors. Soon the room was filled with people, all asking him questions he could barely understand. How did he survive? How did he get home? What happened to his ship? He did not have answers they would believe. But he was alive. He was home. And somewhere in this city, in this world, a baby girl had just been born. She would grow up normal. She would play and learn and love and cry. She would have no memory of golden halls or dying stars or the loneliness of 10 million years. But sometimes, when she looked at the night sky, her eyes would catch the starlight in a way that made people stop and stare. And deep inside her, buried beneath layers of mortal flesh and mortal thoughts, something ancient would stir. Waiting. Remembering. Hopping, 25 years had passed since that impossible day. The galaxy was different now. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, no longer a young and unknown species, but a civilization that made the older races nervous. Word had spread of what happened on the horizon's edge, how a dying human had saved his crew before himself, how he had humbled a goddess with his second wish, how he had given an eternal the gift of mortality with his third. The story traveled across 1,000 worlds. Species that had ignored humanity for centuries now watched them with new eyes. Ho sat in his office at the Galactic Embassy, looking out at a sky filled with ships from 100 different worlds. At 59 years old, his hair had turned gray and his face had grown lines, but his eyes were still sharp, still kind. He was ambassador now, the man who had changed the universe with 3 wishes. He hated the title, but it had brought humanity to the table where the great decisions were made. He would carry it for as long as necessary. His desk was covered with reports and requests, diplomatic missions to plan, treaties to review, 1,000 small decisions that shaped the future of his species. But today, he had set all of that aside. Today, he had a visit to make. The hospice was quiet. It was a place where people came to spend their final days in peace, where families gathered to say goodbye, where the end of life was treated not as a defeat, but as a natural part of the journey. Ho walked the familiar halls slowly. His illness had taken much of his strength. The doctors had told him he had months left, maybe less. He had refused treatment that might extend his life at the cost of his quality of life. He had seen enough of death to know that quantity mattered less than meaning. He found the room where he had been staying for the past week, but before he entered, a young woman stepped out into the hallway. She was 25 years old with dark hair and a kind face. She wore the simple uniform of a hospice nurse. Her name tag read Shin Vila. "Ambassador," she said with a gentle smile, "how are you feeling today?" "Old," Ho said with a small laugh, "but grateful, always grateful." Vila smiled. She had no memory of golden halls or dying stars. She had no idea that she had once been a goddess who watched civilizations rise and fall. She only knew that she had always felt drawn to this work, to holding the hands of the dying, to comforting those in their final moments. She did not know why, it simply felt right. "Would you like to sit in the garden today?" she asked. "The weather is beautiful." Ho nodded. "I would like that, but first, may I ask you something?" "Of course." He looked at her carefully, at the gold flecks in her dark eyes, at the way the light seemed to gather around her just slightly when she smiled. "Do you ever look at the stars and feel like you have forgotten something important?" Vila blinked, surprised by the strange question. Then she laughed softly. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When I was a child, I used to dream about the stars, strange dreams. I was floating in a great hall filled with crystals, and each crystal held a story. I never understood those dreams." "Perhaps they will make sense someday," Ho said quietly. Vila tilted her head, looking at him curiously. "You say strange things, Ambassador, but I like that about you." They walked to the garden together. The sun was warm, the flowers were blooming, and birds sang in the nearby trees. Ho sat on a bench and Vila sat beside him. "Tell me a story," she said. She often asked him for stories. He had so many of them. Ho smiled. I will tell you about a goddess who was lonely. And so he told her, not everything, not yet, but pieces. A goddess who watched dying worlds, a human who made strange wishes, a second chance given freely without expecting anything in return. Vila listened with wide eyes. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That is a beautiful story, she said, but also sad. The goddess gave up everything she was, all her power, all her memories, all her existence, just for the chance to feel again. Was it worth it? Ho looked at her, at this young woman who held the hands of the dying, who brought comfort to those in their final moments, who had chosen a life of service without knowing why. What do you think? He asked. Vila considered the question seriously. She looked at the garden around them, at the flowers and the birds and the warm sunlight. I think it must have been worth it, she said slowly, because the alternative was emptiness, an eternity of watching without feeling, of existing without living. That is not really life at all. She turned to look at him. Life is not about how long you exist. It is about what you feel along the way, the love you share, the people you help, the moments that take your breath away. Ho felt tears gather in his eyes. He blinked them back. Yes, he said, I think that is exactly right. Days passed. Ho grew weaker. His family came to visit. His daughter, now a starship captain herself, sat with him for hours, holding his hand and listening to his stories. His wife gray-haired now but still beautiful, slept beside him every night. And Vila was there, always there. She adjusted his pillows. She brought him water. She sat with him during the long nights when sleep would not come. They talked about everything, the stars, the future, the meaning of life and death. Ho told her stories he had never told anyone else, and she listened with a patience that seemed older than her years. The end came on a quiet morning. Ho woke to find Vila sitting beside his bed. The sunlight was streaming through the window, painting the room in shades of gold. His family had stepped out for a moment. It was just the two of them. It is time, Ho said. His voice was weak but peaceful. Vila took his hand. Her eyes were wet with tears. I am scared, she admitted. I do not know why. I have sat with so many people at this moment, but with you, it is different. It feels like losing someone I have known forever. Ho smiled. His old eyes, still kind, looked into hers. You have known me forever, he said, and we will meet again. I believe that, in some form, in some way. This is not goodbye, it is just, until next time. Vila held his hand, and something stirred inside her, a warmth, a light, a feeling that had been sleeping for 25 years. She remembered. Suddenly, completely, totally. She remembered the Hall of Wishes, the Eternals, 10 million years of loneliness, the human who had given her the impossible gift of mortality. Tears streamed down her face. Ho, she whispered. He smiled. There you are. I was wondering when you would wake up. You knew, all this time you knew it was me. Of course I knew. I would recognize those eyes anywhere. Vila wept. She wept for 10 million years of loneliness. She wept for the joy of the life she had lived. She wept for the man who was slipping away, the man who had changed everything. Thank you, she said. Thank you for giving me this, for giving me life, for giving me feeling, for giving me meaning. Ho squeezed her hand weakly. Thank you, he replied, for teaching me that even gods can change, that no one is ever truly beyond hope. He closed his eyes. And in that moment, in that quiet room filled with golden sunlight, Ho passed from one existence to the next. Vila sat with him for a long time. She held his hand even after it grew cold. She remembered everything now, the power she had given up, the eternity she had traded for a single mortal life. And she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. When Ho's memorial service was held, Vila stood among the crowd. Humans and aliens alike had come to honor him, They spoke of his bravery, his kindness, his impossible wishes. She looked up at the stars and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered, "for teaching me how to live." Somewhere in the void between galaxies, something stirred. The other Eternals, the ones who had slept for millions of years, waiting for nothing, existing without purpose. They had watched what happened. They had seen the human who made impossible wishes. They had watched one of their own choose mortality. And for the first time in 10 million years, they felt something. It was small, just a flicker, a tiny spark in the endless darkness. But it was there. Hope. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had shown them something they never expected, that endings were not just endings, that mortality was not a weakness but a gift, that feeling was not something to be feared but embraced. And one by one, ancient beings began to stir. They turned their attention toward a small blue planet on the edge of an ordinary galaxy. And they wondered what other miracles humanity might teach them. The story of Ho and the goddess Vela spread across the stars. It became legend, a reminder that the smallest beings could change the greatest forces, that love could move the universe. And in a hospice in Seoul, a young woman with ancient eyes continued her work. She held the hands of the dying. She comforted those who were afraid. She showed them that endings could be peaceful. She had been a goddess once. Now she was something better. She was human.